Classes in session. Hey, you doing? And welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. Today I am taking you to class. I am going to teach you a lesson, and I am going to teach you the fine art of carefully, masterfully, intelligently, maybe a little sneaky, interweaving pop culture and movies into your classroom. The kids are going to love it. If you frame it and you preset the movie properly and you have the right sort of, it does, listen, not every movie needs to have an assignment, yada, 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 but these can. And these can have an assignment that they'll enjoy watching the movie, and then they're going to get a lot of it out on the back end. Now, here's the hard part, guys. We've created an educational system that has quieted the creativity, the ideas, the exuberance of youth. We've quieted them in order to sit down and write and memorize and take tests and, do all of the things they are expected to do. And unfortunately, when I get a hold of them, or when you guys as other teachers who have all these creative ideas get a hold of them, sometimes you come up against it. You come up against it because it's not that they don't know how to think creatively. It's that they were taught that's not what's going to get them an A, and that's not what's going to help them in class, and so on and so forth. And so they start to quiet their ideas. I'm not about quieting. I want big, rumpus debates, discussions, sometimes, yes, even intelligent arguments about the nature of the things we discuss and the ideas and the philosophies of the people we focus on in both history and politics and society class and world religions and all of those courses. All right. Now, I'm strictly talking about the social sciences. Sorry, math people, you guys are going to have to find your own movies. But when I look at some of these movies, and it's funny, the older I get, the more that I can go back to other movies, and kids are like, oh, wait, I've never seen that. The more that I look back at these movies, the more that you can recognize movies are always a reflection of the context in which they were written by the people that wrote them. So right off the bat, you don't have to step a foot anywhere else. Movies are a reflection of the time, such as a piece of visual art is a reflection of the time. A music masterpiece is a reflection of the time. So no matter where you go, kids are able to, and as a teacher, you need to be able to tie these strings together for them, at least provide them a narrow path so they can start to walk down the road and actually say what they think. Tell me what you think. I sat down with my class. We just started a new semester, and I say, what do you care about? What do you think? What excites you? When you sit down and talk about big issues, what are they? You know what I heard from them? Nothing. Not because they don't think anything, not because they don't have big ideas, but because they looked around the room and they thought, well, I don't want to say. Or they thought, well, maybe my idea is not good enough. Or they thought, there's no way this relates to history. Or they thought. And what they did is they thought themselves right out of the conversation. So I try to reel them back in by saying, you like music? Great. We're going to do a music assignment. And they're like, what? You like art? You like doing art? You like things that are tactile? They're like, yeah, this is history class, Joanna. Great. We're doing an art assignment. If you guys want me to do podcasts on those two things, we're going to do them. I'll do them later so you can get an idea of how I interweave those things. You like movies and TV? I'm your girl. Then we got it. They're like, what? Joanna, we're in history. How are we going to do an assignment on a movie? You're going to make us watch what? Some documentary? You're going to make us watch the same old Even something as obvious, even though Oppenheimer was a great movie, something that obvious, we're just going to watch this pseudo documentary about something we have to learn and it's another movie. And I'm like, no, we're not. Although those are great movies. And there's always space for brilliant historical fiction, for political satire, for all of those things. So I have space for all of those. But I said, we're going to have a little bit more fun than that. They're like, what? So I'm sitting with History 10. Actually, and this can go as low as History 7 and 8. But in Canada, it really fits in the History 10 curriculum. All right? Because one of the things, obviously a big significant aspect of History 10 is World War II. And I know that in all parts of the world, right, we learn about World War II. Now, we can teach this in relatively easy to understand, kind of benign, take a note, here are the dates, here's what happened, here are the horrific realities, or, and I'm just spitballing here, we take a step out of that for a second and say, put down your books. After you've already read about the growing fascist state in Germany, after you already read about what he did with that power, but after you've already read the backstory, you have to have read the backstory. Sorry, kids, you got to do you got to do your homework before you can do something fun. And I say to my kids all the time, history isn't about the what, it's about the why. And the what you're going to memorize, you're going to maybe hold on to some fact, and then you're going to move on. But the why you're going to see time and time and time again when you are in different places, when you're studying different material, when you're talking with your friends, when you're having discussions with your kids in the future, all of it. It's all going to tie back around, and you're going to remember the why of the event. And then when you're sitting watching the news, you're like, wait a minute. I can see the why. We get wrapped up in fact, we get wrapped up in the what, and we don't look at the why. So what I try to do with the kids is force them outside of their bubble. Understand that we're going to learn outside of the material for a second. So the first series of movies I want to talk about, Star Wars. And guys, horribly enough, I'm going to talk about the first three. I know. I can hear people my age groaning, doubling over, shutting off their computers or their radios while they're listening to me. Give me a second. Episodes 1, 2, and 3, okay, fine. They weren't my favorite. Heaven help me, number 2 was Anna's. But what these episodes of this series did was it reflected quite beautifully the rise of fascism, of totalitarian dictatorship, of Hitler in Germany during World War II. Emperor Palpatine and the way he gained power is a direct reflection on World War II. It just is. If you've never heard that before, I'll be surprised, but it just is. So we watch how he positions himself. How does the emperor stand in different spaces? As the intelligent sage, as the quiet observer, as the orator, as the guy who stands for justice when nobody else will, as a guy that puts himself in sort of the limelight in order to start accruing and start collecting power, a guy that creates fear in the background, that subtly creates war and hardship and hatred, a guy that slowly shows a victim, or slowly shows somebody to blame for the problems that are arising. Sound familiar? It's not the what, it's the why. And if you can see the why, you will see it happening in many different places with many different people on many different levels. One of my favorite lines of Star Wars, and I have it on my arm actually, is when Queen Amidala stands up and they have had an attack on the Empire, and Emperor Palpatine stands up and is given emergency powers. He's given all of the power to do what? To defend us from our enemies. He's created the enemy to defend us from our enemies. And the whole galactic House of Commons, if you will, roaring applause. And Queen Amidala says something to the effect of, "So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause." Listen to that for a second. Guys, listen to that, because that quote can be used right now. Right now. How many people are talking about boogeymen in the closet? How many people are talking about it's those people? As soon as we deal with them, our country will be better. And we give them more power to take care. It's been absolutely an accepted fact that Hitler burned down the Reichstag. He had it burned down anyways. And why? So he could show the need for emergency powers. So he could prove to everybody that, oh my God, look, they're coming. Look at what they've done. Now, when I talk about that with my students and we talk about Palpatine in Star Wars, I'm like, and they're like, well, do you have to physically burn something down? I'm like, get out of the what? Get out of the what? It's not about the what. It's not about the parliament. It's not about the drone army. It's not the what's. It's the why. And if you can figure out the why of history, if you can figure out the cause and the consequence, the effects of action, doesn't matter what date it happened on. It matters how somebody garners that kind of power and what are they wanting to do with it. And the key is always, and I realize in Star Wars, it's obviously more science fiction based, but kids love it. I have walked across a couple kids that didn't, but heaven help them. When you look at a movie like this, and then you compare it to what's gone on in our world, different times of history, it's about the acquisition of power, but then it's about the retention of power. Once you gain power, once you gain notoriety, once you gain a level of superstardom, if you will, everything you do then is working to hold it up. That's the why. The why isn't just about the power that you get. The why is about how do you keep it. Right? And in here, it talks about hate leading to fear, leading to anger, and the dark side. I'm not sure in what order that goes in. It's a beautiful metaphor about balance. It's a beautiful metaphor about separation of powers. It's a beautiful metaphor that a single person, even Yoda, never has all of the answers. They can never see completely clearly, because in and of yourself, you always have, to some degree, narrow focus, right? Anakin becomes Darth Vader, not because he hates, but because he's scared. Who made him scared? Who created that fear? Because I look around the world today and I, again, talk about it class after class after class. You want to know what drives people to do horrible things? Fear. Fear. And the more we amp that up, the more easily I can say they are the enemy, whoever they are. Again, the what and the who don't matter. The why matters. The more I can point and say it's them, but don't worry, I got you. I'll take care of them. And then all of a sudden, you have students in your room talking about different dictators around the world, and they're talking about different moments in time, and they're talking about today, and they're talking about yesterday, and they're talking about in gym class, because it all ties together. They start to understand that history isn't just this thing that happens out there, it's the thing that's happening right here all the time. So if I can get them on board, I might joke with them about the force, but if I can get them on board, they start to understand and they start being able to apply it. And then they're all in, guys. Because then I can use that as a metaphor to tap into so many different aspects of the curriculum. Going up a notch. I don't know if it's up a notch, this might be laterally. More sci fi. I'm staying with straight up sci fi today. I'll do another genre if you want me to. The X-Men. I'm holding up Last Stand only because it's the first movie I picked up off my shelf. The X-Men. Listen, everybody loves a good superhero movie, but the X-Men is more than that, right? And the story of Magneto, if you haven't watched the X-Men, heaven help you, but the story of Magneto and how he became Magneto and the conditions under which the immense pressure and pain he was under, and again, oddly tying again to the Holocaust, the immense pressure he was under, and the metamorphosis of his genes enabled him to regain control of that fear. In fact, his power was born from fear. So what do you do with it? What do you do when you've been hurt that badly? Do you retaliate? Do you enslave? Do you imprison? Do you wipe them out? You want to talk about big questions that apply to politics and history and philosophy? The X-Men is it. And so they have a good time watching it. Everybody's always like, everything has to be so serious. It is serious. There are serious underpinnings. Can they have fun watching it? Can you allow them to immerse themselves into a world that's completely unique, but I am eventually going to pull at a string until they are all in, sitting on the edge of their seat, wondering what they would do with all of the power? With no check or balance? And then what does that power become symbolic of? We might not all be able to fly, but again, it's not the what, it's the why. The more power a single entity can gain, what do we do with it? And then in the X-Men, obviously, there's this incredible level of conversation surround being different, right? That's what the mutant is. It's a metaphor for being different. And in the bottom depths of us, we are afraid of that which we do not know and we do not understand. That's the goal, right? And in the wake of fear, before people understand them, they're met with hostility. But what's their goal? Well, Magneto's goal is that of, humans prove themselves to be who they were. Look at what they did to me. I will show them what I can do back. Guys, this has ramifications for our prison system, for our political system, for international relations, for codes of conduct and rules of war, all in the X-Men. And instead of passing it over and being like, "Oh, well, it's just another action look at all of that application. And you got to watch a guy with titanium in his claws, for crying out loud. Got to watch people with this incredible, fantastic capacity. You want to know why we're drawn to these people? Because although the bad guys might do horrible things, there's always people that are willing to give another chance, more space, another another option of doing the right thing no matter how much I have been hurt. Tell me how many metaphoric ideals and connections can be seen in that movie. It's incredible that and I mean, I often see a lot in action movies and sci-fi movies because they try to speak to a whole bunch of different ideals, and they get to exist on this whole other plane. But just like a great work of art, these movies are tapping into our biggest fears as humans and the capacity to which we could rise to the occasion to be better than we were as superheroes. Metaphorically, of course. All right, last thing, I'm going to bring up a TV show. I don't know if you guys have already seen this. If you haven't already seen this, I don't know what you're doing wasting your time watching me. Battlestar Galactica. Battlestar Galactica as a series is perhaps the deepest philosophical dive into AI, how timely, into what is a soul, into faith, into what's the word? Into the degeneration of us into small groups of protecting the like minded, into our creations and what we are willing to do with them or what they're willing to do to us. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis because this happens within the first episode, so I'm not ruining anything. Are you ready? Battlestar Galactica. Less than 5 minutes. Here we go. Humans create AI, robots, to do all the jobs we don't want to do. Cool. AI grows up, becomes a little more self aware. AI doesn't want to do the jobs we are now commanding them to do. We say do them anyway. We fight. Sound like anything? The parallels to slavery are outstandingly obvious. In this first conflict, humans against, they are called the Cylons lose. It's their first time coming up against the humans. What do? They regroup, fly off the planet. They go away for like, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, I can't remember. And all of a sudden they come back, redesigned, impossible to detect, and they've embedded themselves within the human population so that they can drive wedges and plant seeds of doubt and fear and distraction so that when they are ready to fight for the second time, because don't think unless you really finish the job, they're not coming back. Humans are getting obliterated. They get on a ship, they take off. The Cylons kill the majority of the population. Boom, they're gone. And then the Cylons are chasing them. That's all in the first episode. Now you look at that kind of movie and you think, oh my God, that's it. It's just science fiction. It's battles in space. There's this lovely little underpinning that says something to the effect of, it is all happening and it has all happened before. I'm getting that quote wrong. It has all happened before and it will all happen again. What? Well, these themes of whose God is right, these themes of who controls the population, who decides who works for who is enslaved by who, the idea that our tribe has to look like us, be like us, speak like us in order to consider them valued human beings. What are we saving? What are we rescuing? Who has a soul? Who is considered sentient? Now, sure, we can talk about this with direct AI, right? Or you can talk about the animal rights movement. Do they have a soul? Are they sentient? Do they know what is happening? When you step back from these things, you can start to see it doesn't just have to be about people and robots, although that's highly enjoyable. It can be about the treatment of our planet. It can be about the treatment of life on that planet. It can be about the degradation and the lack of sustainability on that planet. The thought that we can just continuously fly through, drive through space, finding new places to ravage and never learning a damn thing because this too will happen again. The cyclical nature of history is probably one of the most important things to teach, period. The rise and the fall of empires, the patterns that are clear. When I teach world religions, I usually get to the end and we've studied 12 major world religions, and my kids will go, Joanna, did we just study the same religion 12 times? I don't know, did we? What's the difference? They'll say context. They'll say language. They'll say time. They'll say need. So when my students can start understanding those deep conflicts and deep issues, and I got them there by drawing in something fictional, because it allows them to think creatively where before they had shut it off. How am I expecting them to think creatively unless I give them paths to let them create? How am I expecting them to draw these grand applications of knowledge when I only ever sit them down to memorize dates and terms and people and places? If that's how we teach, we are losing education. Whereas it's hysterical because there's a lot of people who would say, yeah, but Joanna, you show so many movies. Well, first of all, I don't. I would like to, but I don't. And funnily enough, a lot of the kids will do this after school, will do this before school. We'll figure out ways now to make it bigger than it ever was before because it means something more. It's not just stuck in 1962 anymore. Right? It's not just trapped in the moment because they see the application to today, because this kind of teaching, this kind of grand sort of methodological inclusivity of idea and culture and entertainment all of a sudden allows them to open their minds, free their thoughts, and actually say what they think. And sooner or later, they're talking about history and politics and power and democracy and control and fear in a whole different light. But they're still bringing up the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they're still bringing up, the War of 1812, and they're still bringing up because they're like, oh my gosh, I can see it there, and there. That's, to me, humble opinion, my 72 cents. To me, that is education. What's it to you? Now, if you like this rendition, I would love to go through more movies as they apply. I don't want them to be obvious. There are obvious movies that fit the classroom. Those ones bore me because it's too on the nose. And when they're too on the nose for kids, they're like, you can see them. No, the lesson's too obvious. You need to sneak it in, you know? Like pureeing spinach and putting it in the spaghetti sauce. Did you guys do that? Stacy Green Living taught me how to do that. You have to sneak it in. And if you sneak it in, all of a sudden they are talking about big issues and having big conversations and deep thoughts without even being told that's what they were supposed to do today. So if you have any movie suggestions, throw them in the comments. If you want me to continue this with a part 2, maybe I'll tackle drama. Maybe I'll tackle comedy. Comedy is an interesting one. Maybe I'll tackle old school film. You ever watch what happens when you put a black and white movie in front of a grade 10 student? Now that's classroom management. Tell me in the comments, tell me what you think. Ask me any questions you want to, because I would like to consider this sort of a new possibility, maybe once a month, to tackle this kind of education so we can see the bigger picture and we can help students enjoy the debate. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I will see you next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat station. Dismissed.